Hello and welcome. Time for the finale of Season 1 of the Magnus Protocol, Episode 30, Dead End Job. So, final episode of Season 1. We have a lot to talk about. This is the first one of these that has taken 2 full pages of notes. And I expect it will not be the last, but there is a lot to talk about here. So let's start off with our classification number. And real quick, hopefully the green screen looks a little bit better. I have a new light. I've invested in a new light that is right here. As you can see the shadow right there. And it is hopefully going to make a difference with some of the complaints that people have had about the green screen right in here. I may have to adjust it some more, and we'll see as time passes. But for now, hopefully it helps. Our classification today is CAT2RS, which I believe is the first S that we've seen there, which is really interesting. 3366-1305-2024-1305-2024. Transmutation, human, isolation, urban. I have so many thoughts about this episode. Obviously, transmutation being in the classification is very, very interesting because and obviously it's talking about the custodian later on, right? But it also might be talking about Sam, and I have a theory on that and what's going to happen there. But first off, we'll do this the way we normally do. We'll go through the whole episode. I do want to say, if you are somebody that doesn't care about the alchemy, I will try to save the alchemy stuff towards the end here. But it specifically gets called out by Celia in this episode. So although I have gotten comments that are like, I really don't care about all this alchemy stuff. I wish you'd just talk about the characters. Like, I get that, but I do think it's important. So I urge you not to skip that section because we have kind of a big bombshell that's dropped alchemically here in this episode. But starting off, Sam doesn't feel great. Celia gives him some painkillers, but I'm wondering if there's not something more to what the archivist did to him than just extracting a statement. Obviously, the archivist, searched through, found this place, found what they needed to find, but... And that's, what is it exactly that the archivist was trying to find? Was it this place or was it Celia? We'll get to that. But the fact that Sam is kind of out of it for a lot of this episode could be because he was hurt, right? Absolutely, could be. But it also could be because something might be happening to him. Every one of the statements so far that the archivist has taken seem to kill the people that give them in the manner of whatever was going on in that statement. And so I'm worried that it could be that he's feeling far away because his bones were trying to separate themselves. Either way, it's either not going to matter, or if we get to see Sam again, then it will absolutely matter. But we'll see. They're ignoring Alice's messages. Don't want to get a speech right now. Understandable. Celia says, well, they're safe on the train. And again, we don't have a confrontation on this train, but it is still incredibly hilarious to me. The idea of this creature just on the train, just hanging out, on the tube, having a good time. There's a fun little moment here because we do a lot of jumping around between characters in this episode. And I always have a break between each one. And at first I thought that's why I'd gotten to 2 pages, but I have a whole half a page of notes with no breaks in between at the end. So that's not why. But Alice trying to track them down, trying to find a train, and the transcript specifically says that the ticket officer is not paid enough for this. And I just thought that was really fun. But Colin calls and tells Alice that he needs her help. And Alice kind of blows him off to go try and help Sam, much like she did to Teddy, and Colin says goodbye. He says something's wrong with Freddy, and then when she won't come help him, he says goodbye, and I think Colin is probably super dead. I think Colin is toast. And I think we're starting this next season with Colin gone, vanished, right? Sam gone, vanished, and everybody else trying to put the pieces back together. And without Lena, too. Now, Lena obviously could show back up again, but that leads us into the third section. There's like 3 POVs during this episode, right? We have Sam and Celia, we have Alice, and then we have Gwen. And Lena leaves. Lena says that she talked to MP Trevor, and she's done. She leaves. And specifically when she says she's leaving, she tells Gwen that she's not ready, she has no idea what's really at play, and wishes her luck, saying she's going to need it. And I think Lena is absolutely right. I don't think Gwen is ready for all this, and we see that in the second Gwen POV later on, where Trevor calls her to tell her, hey, you're it. And Gwen says, what am I supposed to do, basically? But words it in a way that makes it seem like she's got it handled, you know? And Trevor's just like, well, I'm not going to micromanage you, so you just do it. You'll be fine. I think things are about to be very bad at the OIAR, and that's not just because 2 people are going to be gone. I think it's going to be real bad because Gwen has no idea what she's doing, and she's too proud to admit that. And I like Gwen a lot. I really do. Even despite the fact that she backstabbed Lena. I like Gwen a lot. I worry that this is going to be the death of Gwen, trying to get a handle on all this when she's not ready for it. But that's the least of our problems, really, because we have... Like, this is such a good episode for so many reasons. We have Sam and Celia get to the Hilltop Center, right? And they get there in the dead of night, and it is like Entity Central, right? There are all these different shops, and there's even like a banging in Gray's Appliances. There is a dentist office with the slogan, "We want your teeth." These are like, this is the prime real estate for the fears, right? You enter into here in the dead of night, and your greatest fear is taken over, right? But also, this place is super cool because it has a custodian. You may say, well, Trey, that's a really dumb reason to think the place is cool. No, I mean, like, this guy's been doing this job for like 30 years, has seen his boss killed and everything. This guy is the epitome of, my workplace has a set of weird rules, and I have to follow them. And he just does it. Nobody's told him the rules. He just does it. He is like the guy to be in this place. And I wish we could have got more from him, but also the fact that we get a statement from him was incredibly exciting. Because this is maybe my favorite character in Protocol so far. The custodian is great. I love this guy. The fact that this guy is like, yeah, you know, there's a weird banging in Gray's Appliances. I'll just go tell it to be quiet. It'll be fine. It'll stop. And like the one time he didn't, I'm jumping around so much. I know. I'm so sorry. I'm too excited. There's too much to talk about. The one time he didn't just leave it alone and stay out of the way, he finds a woman like with mismatched clothes, like stuck to her, like pinned to her. And when he goes to call the police, when he comes back, she's been taken. She's gone. The drunk man that wanders into the I've got the word for it here. I did not even know this is what you called these kind of stores, but a news agent. And look, I'm a stupid American, okay? And he wanders in there, and the next thing you know, the custodian's just, I'm gonna go to the other side because I smell burned hair and flesh. The fact that he finds like pieces of people, like torn out hair, a half melted tooth, a rotted fingernail. Like, this guy is prime statement material, right? And we get a really good one from him. But unfortunately, it does resolve in his death, which again makes it seem like Sam might not be quite as safe as he thought that he was. But we don't really get time to find out on that. I've got to stop jumping around. Specifically, at one point in his statement, the custodian mentions that sometimes people just arrive thin, emaciated souls walking around lost and confused. He mentions that blood seems like it's mixed into the concrete, or if the building itself just bleeds, or if it's a wound that never really heals. And we know, of course, that there is a crack here. We know, of course, this is where people can fall through, right? And so it is literally a wound that cannot heal, right? It's a wound in reality, as it were. But just the fact that this guy is just considering that idea without even knowing about that at the bottom of the basement there is crazy cool. I love that. There is a voice that stands out from the Archivist in this episode. And that voice is Beth Eyre, who voiced Lucia Wright in Magnus Archives. I don't think this is Lucia Wright, right? I think that that would be such a weird pull. It could be, sure, but I think this is an amalgamation. And could it include Lucia Wright or this world's version of Lucia Wright? Maybe, but I think it's just as likely that it's just Beth Eyre voiced, you know, an aspect of the Archivist. Either way, it's really interesting that that is the voice that comes to the fore when it seems like the Archivist is getting excited. I think that means something, you know what I mean? So, from there, as my favorite character gets turned into concrete, because he's, oh man, I'm jumped around too much. I have to explain that. He turns to concrete because he felt like he was becoming a part of the Hilltop Center. The Hilltop specifically is what he calls it. And that even when he leaves, he dreams about the Hilltop. And when he starts talking about his dream is when he gets concreted. And they did such good work on the voice work with the effects for the lungs as his lungs fill up with concrete. I'm a real bad asthmatic. That's what the intro references when it says that Trey's allergic to air. I'm a real bad asthmatic. And that sound horrified me because I've heard that sound, not with concrete, thankfully, but I've heard that sound coming from my own lungs that I can't really make the sound. I'm so sorry. But when they're full of liquid, and it just horrifying. It's very, very well done. Also, just little comments like the owner having a really wide smile and threatening his daughter, basically, the custodian's daughter, being like, where does your daughter like to shop? And things like the owner being found strung up by his own blood vessels or veins. Just, okay. I'm assuming as long as you follow the rules, you're fine, with the exception of an outside interference, right? But that eventually it still gets to you anyway. Because as we can tell, it is either the fear or the desire, because he starts talking about how he and the Hilltop are one. We are one. I am the Hilltop. Could be the desire as well, but eventually it soaks into who you are and you can't escape it anymore. And then of course we have the actual like transmutation of him turning into concrete. Transmutation being a big thing in alchemy, being the main primary way to change things in alchemy is transmutation. So very, very interesting. And that leads us to the big climax of the episode. Celia and Sam make it down into the basement, and we find out that Celia not only knows about the crack that splits the light like a prism, the wound in the world, right? But that it wants her back. That it's trying to find balance. And we'll get into the balance in a minute, because she mentions alchemy, the Institute, the Dua Prima, the 4 elements, the 7 planets, like it's all balance, right? But she doesn't want to go back. She has reasons to stay here. She didn't like the previous one, and Jack's here, and so her intention is to throw Sam in there and balance it out. And this was like a gut punch to me, man. I don't know why I trusted Celia so much, but as like the one character that was a connection to archives that's like a guaranteed connection. Not Helen Richardson's laugh being the same, not Trevor Herbert seeming to have that same like go for the throat mentality, but like one direct connection, if you'll pardon my pun, a concrete connection, right? I didn't expect her to do this, to turn on Sam like this, and it kind of broke my heart. It's wonderful storytelling, it's masterful work. I'm super impressed by it. But I fully bought into Celia. I was like, yeah, she wants to figure out what happened. That's what she's here for. When no, in actuality, she wanted Sam to want to know what happened so that she could even the odds. So she could balance the books, basically. And Sam's a good guy. Because even then, when Celia starts to give a statement because the archivist appears, Sam tries to protect her. And we'll get into Celia's statement in just a second. But the fact that the archivist says, "At last, it is mine," when taking Celia's statement, on the first, like, I listened to this episode twice to be able to make sure I was following along with everything. On the first listen, I was like, okay, the archivist was looking for the crack, right? I don't think that's true. I think the archivist wanted Celia's statement. I think the archivist wanted to know what happened to Celia in the domain in season 5 of the Magnus archives. And I don't know why that's what it wanted to know, but that's the statement she started to give when she starts talking about how, being compelled, she woke up with nothing but a dream of things that sliced my who from me with claws like scalpels, about how they would toy with her, peeling away her name and then her memory before the fearless one reached in and pulled her out, leaving her story to fall away like autumn leaves. Celia's domain is like referenced, right? Where she lost her original name of Lynn Hammond, where she lost not just her name, but then her memory, where she became a new person. Not because, like all these other new transmuted people, because something had separated from her, but because something was ripped away from her. She lost the who that she was. The fact that she says it's creatures that use claws like scalpels, things that did that, right? We don't know all that happened. This is more information than we ever got about what happened in there, other than that Georgie was the one that pulled her out, right? Why does the archivist want to know that? I mean, obviously I want to know that too, right? It's the problem I talked about in archives of the I and I would get along super great because I have to know. I want to know that story. Why does the archivist want to know? So, when Sam hears Celia giving this statement, he saves her. Even despite his fears, even despite his misgivings, even despite what she was about to do to him, he saves her. And he charges the archivist, and they fall into the crack. Now, it could have been he just loved her that much. It could have been he was a hero in his final moments, right? But Sam saved her even despite what she was going to do to him. And I hope that affects Celia. I hope that changes something for Celia. Because she does mention, you know, it wasn't all a lie. I did actually like you. But my fear is Alice isn't coming back to the OAR either, because Celia's going to push her in. I mean, theoretically, she wouldn't have to, right? Because Sam has already balanced the books. But now that the archivist is in there, is it not more unbalanced? And now something has to come from the other side to balance it back out again. And if something does, who's it going to be? If this archivist is John, Martin, and Elias that got pulled through before, and Celia came through, then surely things would have needed to been balanced with those three and the Fears came through, even without Celia. I think Celia might be wrong about the balance. And I wonder instead if it's not that the original dimension calls for the person that lived there just because that's where they belong. If she's not wrong, then what went the other way to balance out the others? It's fascinating stuff. It's brilliant. I want to know more, and we got a break now, and I don't want a break. I want to know more. The episode ends with Alice coming down there and Celia just saying, they're gone. She says, he tried to protect me even though, and she's not going to finish, even though I was ready to throw him into another dimension, never to see his home again. They're gone. Are we going to get season 2? Punished Sam comes back from the other dimension, and he's stronger now from working with Basira and Georgie and Melanie. Or are we going to get one of those three come over? If we get Georgie come over, is Georgie from that dimension going to meet Georgie from this dimension? Is Archives Georgie going to meet Protocol Georgie? If Melanie comes over, how is that going to affect things? And I just, at this point, I desperately want somebody to come over from that side that knows about all the fears and everything to get some context. But we got to talk about the alchemy. Because Celia says something here that legitimately, when I heard it, I had to pause the video, I had to stop, and I had to do some serious research. Because Celia mentions the Dua Prima. And so I want to break down just very briefly the main structure of alchemy. We're going to have a full alchemy video where I'll get into more detail on this and alchemy on how it's used in the Magnus Protocol, right? But alchemy is a pseudoscience in a lot of ways, right? It is just as much religion as it is science, and in some ways a lot more religion than it is science, tied into Hermeticism and astrology and things like that, right? But from alchemy came chemistry, as we've said a few times, right? Astronomy and astrology, alchemy and chemistry, you know, all these things that pushed each other forward, right? Alchemy is built upon the great work, the magnum opus, the construction of the Philosopher's Stone through transmuting materials, specifically minerals or metals, into gold and thus other forms, right? We've talked about the process of the four colors, right? Of albedo and negredo and citrinitas and rubedo, right? But also you have the four basic elements, air, earth, fire, and water. And you have the 7 planetary metals, or the 7 planets, right? As was mentioned, 4 elements, 7 planets in this episode. Those being lead, Saturn, tin, Jupiter, iron, Mars, gold, the sun, copper, Venus, quicksilver, Mercury, and silver, the moon. And like I said, we're going to get into all that more in the alchemy episode. But you also have the 3 primes. The Tria Prima, which is sulfur, or the soul, Mercury, or the spirit, salt, body, and these were made by Paracelsus, also known as Theophrastus von Hohenheim, in the year 1493 to 1541. Those are the years that he lived, right? Before Paracelsus, a lot of Grecian, Egyptian alchemy, and specifically Hermeticism, used the Dua Prima, which was just sulfur and mercury. And you may say, well, what does all this matter? Why are you focusing so much on this? I don't believe that Jonathan Sims, my boy, and Rusty Quill would make the mistake of using the Dua Prima when they meant the 3 primes, the Tria Prima, right? I don't believe they would do that. That has to be on purpose. too much of their stuff has been right on for me to think that was an accident, which means for the first time we have a time frame. Because alchemy in the Magnus Protocol must have changed and offset from our world's alchemy before the birth of Paracelsus, or at least before Paracelsus published his first manuscript about the Tria Prima. And to tie all this back in with my theory about Albertus Magnus, I just mentioned Paracelsus was in, lost my page. Paracelsus was in 1493 to 1541. My boy Albertus Magnus. My boy. I say my boy like I actually knew the man. Was 1200 to 1280, which is well before Paracelsus. Well before Hohenheim. So, it could have been Grecian, it could have been Hellenistic, it could have been Hermeticism, but if Albertus Magnus was the one that bound the fears, that would be a drastic enough shift that would lead alchemy down a very different path, which would explain how all of the little differences keep coming up, right? If before the birth of modern alchemy, alchemy shifted, we wouldn't have the Tria Prima. It would explain why we're not hearing people talk about salt as much, though salt is in the logo, as multiple people pointed out in the comments. Thank you so much for that. It would explain a lot about where things are a little different in alchemy. And again, you may say, well, Trey, you're digging too deep for this, but I just cannot believe that was an accident. It could be Celia herself doesn't know that much about alchemy, and so she's focused on the Dua Prima, or it could be that of the Tria Prima, only the first two matter for the protocol world, but I just feel like that's too on the nose of a thing to say for that to be a mistake. Now, I'm more than happy if they come out and say, actually, you know, it's the Tria Prima later on, and they say, Celia she didn't do enough research, then I will eat crow on this. But I feel like the change from the Dua Prima to the Tria Prima with Paracelsus is a pretty big one, because Paracelsus is pretty important when it comes to alchemy. There's a reason that the name Hohenheim has become so, what's the right word, popular when it comes to alchemy, right? There's even one of the main characters in Full Metal Alchemist, for instance, is named after Paracelsus. Is named after Theophrastus von Hohenheim in Van Hohenheim. So I really don't think this is a mistake. I think this is a very, very cool clue that will help us. I want to dig a little bit deeper here, though I'm going to save more of this for the full alchemy video in Magnus Protocol, right? But specifically, the work that Paracelsus put out in 1530 was the Opus Paramirum. I'm really bad at pronouncing all these, and I'm so sorry. But in that, he believed that all diseases came down to the three primes, the three elements of mercury for a fluid and changeable element, for a combustible element was sulfur, and for a permanent element or a solid was salt. And that if you could find what aspect of each disease or poison tied into those three, you could find an easy cure for them, which again, lest you've forgotten, dear viewer, a cure-all, a panacea or a panacea, a immortality elixir, something that can cure all disease and help man live forever, was another part of the great work, because that is the ultimate goal of the Philosopher's Stone. Turn lead to gold to become immortal. So it's important, and it may not seem like it's that important, and you may say, I just don't care about any of that, and maybe it doesn't matter at all, but it definitely stood out to me of, why did she use the Dua Prima? And then, as we talked about, the Archivist just saying, at last it's mine. Is the Archivist trying to collect... I was going to say memories of the domains, but surely there's not that many to get here. Why would it be here? But is it drawn to Celia because Celia is different? Or was it actually trying to get through to the other side. I don't know. We have time between the end of this season and the start of next season. We have time for theorists to really dig. I'm so sorry, I have the hiccups. To really dig into it. But I think we might, if we go back over, and I might go back over and listen to all of the episodes where the Archivist takes a statement, where Error, right, takes a statement. There's got to be some kind of connection that's leading to. Obviously, the thing had to feed, but it just. Maybe it was just an avatar and it was trying to get back to its world and it fell through originally too. Or maybe it is a combination of people from the previous world and it was trying to get back. But I just really feel like it was after Celia for some reason. I don't know. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. I am so stoked for Magnus Protocol Season 2. Magnus Protocol Season 1 was an absolute knockout hit. I loved it. I know a lot of people are probably going to walk away going, because I keep seeing people make these comments of, what, it just hasn't grabbed me the same way Archives did. Look, Magnus Archives was like made perfect for me. Like the first couple episodes of Archives are absolutely my jam. And the first couple episodes of Protocol were a little slower, sure. But by episode 3, it's already made for me again. And I absolutely adore Magnus Protocol. If you ask me to rank Magnus Archives Season 1 and Magnus Protocol Season 1, I think I would say that I actually like Protocol Season 1 more. Just because I've been able to find all these cool little connections, Whereas at the end of Season 1 of Magnus Archives, I still had no idea what was going on. And maybe at this point, I still have no idea what's going on. But I feel like I know more than I did. I don't know. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. I don't think it has to be a competition. I think both works can exist in and of themselves, and I think they're both really, really well done. Voice acting was incredible yet again, and I loved the Custodian. Custodian was wonderful. Best character in Protocol so far. So sad he's dead. I wanted to see more of him. But let me know your thoughts. Again, I've said it 3 times now. I'm going to close now. I'm going to go. I got to edit this thing. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. And until next time, I've been Trey. This has been The Full Spectrum. Remember to always enjoy the full spectrum. The Magnus Protocol Season 1 had to offer.